Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time zone you may be in, wherever you're joining us from. Appreciate you joining today to the Stronger conference, and I'm excited about sharing with you some information around the topic of becoming the new CISO. Just want to once again talk a little bit about logistics here. There's a poll I published that, if you don't mind answering, be great. A couple of questions there for you, and then also if you have any questions and they come up, there's a question a spot there for you that you can submit questions, and I'll try to answer those as soon as possible during the presentation if needed. So let's hop right in and get started. I think we have about 30 minutes for this presentation, and like I said, I want to be interactive. So if you have questions or other things that we want to go over, then please by all means submit your questions, and I'll try to get to those as we're going. So you're the new CISO. Now what? And so once again, let me start by just introducing who I am. My name is Steve Cobb. I'm the CISO for OneSource Communications. We are a managed IT and managed security service provider. I've been with OneSource about 8 years. I was challenged to start the practice of our managed IT and managed security services. So we provide typical MSP services. We're a little bit of a unicorn in that we do kind of traditional MSSP and MDR. So we do response. We do a lot of incident response. Our teams do a lot of that. We've got security operations centers located on the East Coast and the West Coast. I've got over 30 years of experience in the IT and security industry. I've got experience all the way from startups, starting my own companies, as well as working with several Fortune 100 companies, finance, healthcare, tech, and various others. So anyway, that's who I am. Maybe give you context of where I'm coming from here and what I've seen in our experiences or our discussions with customers throughout the years. So question you might be asking yourself, if you're in this position, you're now the new CISO, how did this happen? A couple of different ways we've seen this happen. One of those where the question is asked because of whatever reason, maybe venture finance or other things require you to have a security officer, and the question was asked, who wants to be the new CISO or security officer? It's that old thing of everybody else stepped back and you stayed in the same place. So essentially, you're volunteered. The other things we see happening today are regulations or requirements that call for a specific person to be identified as the security officer or the CISO. So a lot of, you've probably seen it, a lot of insurance questionnaires and other things that are required today require you to have somebody named. Many of your SOC 2 and other things require these type of plans and organization building to be put in place, or organizational structure, I should say. And so maybe this is the reason why you're the new CISO. Maybe it's that you've been with this business for 15 years or maybe 5 months, and you are the go-to person for IT. We see that happen a lot. Or maybe you're the go-to person for office administrator, but you have a lot of tribal knowledge around technology, and so maybe your business isn't necessarily technology. We typically see in those cases that person is automatically voluntold to be the new security officer. So maybe that's the place you find yourself. Or maybe you were just offered such a sweet deal that you couldn't pass it up, and so you had to dive in with head first into the security world, and now you're the new CISO and you feel really good about it. Regardless of how you got to this place, you're here now. So let's talk through about some of the things that we see CISOs out in the marketplace, no matter what industry and no matter what size of business. We see steps they take that make them the most successful. And success here, I think, measured by how their businesses impact and how they change the culture or behavior of their organization or their industry. That's key and important. And we see organizations become much more security conscious and reduce their risk their risk exposure across the board when these things happen. When the CISO comes in and we have success, our risk is reduced, and the business no longer has the perception that cybersecurity or security operations is a liability to the business. They see it as an enabler of the business in order for the business to be successful. So we'll go through it from that lens today, measuring success. So the first thing you probably want to understand and get a feel for, and this is even if you've been in the business for a while, or you're net new to the business, or you've been escalated, or maybe brought into this role for one way or another, and that is asking the question about how does leadership feel about cybersecurity. There are several steps we can take here that will give you indications outside of just having that conversation. But I think having the conversation is important as well, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But here's some things that you can take a look at and see if they're applicable to what it is the organization that you're becoming the security officer or the CISO for. Review all their existing policies. And the bullet point that I call it here is, if the year of the last review date on any of these policies starts with a 1, you probably should get out. The reason I say that is they probably produced a policy for some requirement way back when, and they never updated it since. That's an indication to me that leadership has little to no interest in considering cybersecurity being a enabler of the business. So, how new are the policies? What policies do they have? And then, as well as a subset of those policies, maybe they bring out a binder of one big information security policy, or maybe they throw 15 policies in front of you on the desk. Pay special attention to both the incident response plan and the business continuity disaster recovery plan. Now, incident response, obviously, the planning that we get in preparation for an incident to occur, all that should have all the partners that you use around insurance. Think about legal, public relations, your actual technology provider, or MSP or MSSP, or internal teams that might handle forensic investigations or remediation steps if an incident was to occur. But this should be a very detailed plan that not only is created, but then also tested. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. The business continuity disaster recovery plan is key as well. And although many times I see people in the security landscape that may say, oh, that's IT's responsibility, I'm going to step away. I will say that your cybersecurity officers, or those with security interest in the business, need to have a review and also input on the business continuity disaster recovery plan, because if an attack or compromise was to happen, it could feed directly into what you're going to do with your business continuity disaster recovery plan. Take, for instance, the idea of ransomware that encrypts your entire infrastructure. That's really, you're going in now to business continuity disaster recovery while you have your incident response plan, and it talks through several pieces tactically, and from a security perspective. You also may need to be operating or standing up your BCDR plans, because your business is trying to rebuild or recover or continue doing business. So that aspect needs to be part of your review early on as well. Review the last 3 security assessments, or pen tests, or red team engagements, or vulnerability scans, whatever those they may be doing on a relatively frequent basis, to look at their environment and how it stands hygiene-wise, best practice-wise for security. We not only want to see that these were done, we need to see what was discovered out of those scans or those assessments, and then what steps were taken to remediate those. Those are always a good indicator that the business is bought in on making sure security is just as well kept up as the landscaping or the lights or their IT infrastructure. Inquire about security awareness training and phishing simulations. Once again, the idea here is, how does leadership view cybersecurity, and how important it is for them to change behaviors or raise awareness of it within the organization. This is a key indicator. And then one other thing to do is review the cyber insurance policies and evaluate the current legal, insurance, incident response, public relations, representation. All these things need to come into place so you understand what's potentially covered or not covered should an incident occur. The other thing you may check there is, are you covered if you're named as part of a lawsuit? We've seen this becoming more prevalent a lot in Europe, but even in the US, I know there's at least one case where a security officer or a leadership person within an organization was named as part of a lawsuit because of a breach that occurred. Now, there are several things that you want to talk with your organization about, but once again, if they're bought into protecting the organization and you have the best interests of the organization at heart, there's really no reason why you shouldn't be extended part of your business insurance, business professional insurance, to cover you in case you're named as part of the lawsuit. Also, obviously, if there's negligence or malfeasance that goes on, that wouldn't be covered under insurance anyway, but you would be protected if a third party or the organization itself was to turn and try to sue you. So key thing to think about and point out there too. And then really here's the idea too that you need to step up on is really having a seat at the table when we talk about fighting to protect the business. So a lot of times these things are budgetary questions, or maybe they're business impact questions. Still, let's sit down and have the discussion. Ask to sit on the next leadership meeting, and then ask very specific questions. And quite honestly, some of these maybe should have been asked before you ever accepted the position, but let's go on the premise again that you didn't have a choice. You were either voluntold or maybe escalated in this position or escorted to this position. Maybe that's the way we should put it. But anyway, the idea is that you should have, so you understand the landscape and what it is you're being asked to secure and oversee, are what was the cybersecurity budget for last year? And then what is it for this year and this coming year, right? So you have an understanding that it's not just a placeholder within the business. It's not just a number that spit out every year with no review or no thoughts of should this be increased or should we think about adding to what our budget is today. Understanding what the business's crown jewels are. What do I mean by crown jewels? What data is important to them, and where is it located? Right? Do we understand that this, maybe it's customer data, maybe it's intellectual property, maybe it's the business systems that we've developed, maybe it's code, could be any or all of those things. But what is it? And then the other question is, where is it located? How long can the business tolerate being hard down? Is that measured in hours, days, or weeks? One of the things that we find out as we go into incident response with customers is they never understand the fallout from, let's just use a ransomware attack as a specific example here. Customers that are encrypted across their organizations, most people associate the cost of ransomware just with the ransoms that you have to pay out. And that's just a small, I'll tell you, that is a minuscule amount most of the time of the effort and the finance has to be put in to rebuild. Think about retaining talent. Many times we see people that just get fed up when they're in a situation that their organization's hard down and they leave and take tribal knowledge with them. Those are all things to be considered. But really, when I've seen this happen many times when we've been in discussions with leadership, sitting around the table after a ransomware event occurred, and we ask that question, and there's representatives from the business and representatives from IT, and we ask that question, how long can the business tolerate being down? And there's different answers there. So this is a place where everybody needs to be on the same page, and we understand really what is the effect of our business if we're down for an hour, a day, or a week, and how do we measure that? Do we have data that if it were to be stolen or leaked, it would cause substantial reputational damage and significant loss of revenue? If the answer is yes there, then if you go back to where I was talking about before, knowing who you have from the standpoint of legal and public relations, they can play a major part in how you respond or recover to an incident where there's data that's been exfiltrated. That is one of the mainstays that we see now in ransomware incidents is not only is data encrypted, so that you can't use your infrastructure and use that data. But typically those threat actors and ransomware as a group, as a service, groups and gangs are taking that data and exfiltrating it before they encrypt it, so that they also have a second level of blackmail. They can tell you, we have your data and we're going to publish it on the dark web if you don't pay the ransom. So that's something for you to consider as well. And once you understand, if you have that data, going back to the crown jewels, where's it at? How do we protect it? How do we make sure that is not um, at risk to be exfiltrated? And then after you start this initial kind of discovery phase and having discussions and understanding the mindset and the viewpoints of leadership, then it's time for you to start doing your own investigations, right? It's time to start looking at what tools do we have in place? Do we have an EDR? Are we doing any type of email security? Do we have network security in place? Do we have firewalls? Do we have a seam on the back end that all these data is going into? Are we collecting our logs, right? And if we are collecting our logs, are we keeping their logs? Here's a question to ask. If we say we're collecting our logs, where are they at? And then ask the question, can I see them? Can I see the logs for yesterday for our firewall or for our Windows events? Whatever the case may be, the validation is another big aspect that I've given many talks on, but another key aspect that I think goes a little under the radar these days, but really needs to be focused on. And that's validating. Not only do we have the tools, but validate the tools are operating the way we expect they should be. Then the other big one, and this is a huge one, an easy one, especially if you're using SaaS applications, including like Office 365, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, any of those other cloud providers or SaaS applications. Are we protecting logins to everything with 2FA or single sign-on? And so that is one of the really easy. It's not a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. That is one thing to be aware of. If you're new to security, there's not a silver bullet. But there are a lot of easy, low cost, low effort remediation steps and detection steps that you can put in place that will make you much more successful in the outcomes that you see from your cybersecurity operations. One of them is two-factor or multi-factor authentication, however you want to call it. Enabling that will make a tremendous difference and reduce your risk dramatically. We've seen mostly the way the story plays out is when a ransomware as a service gang runs against an organization that has multi-factor enabled, they move on to an easier target. They're looking to turn around money quick, get in and get out, and that is a barrier that dissuades attackers from going forward. If we have these tools and we do have alerts and the logs are there, everything looks good, who's looking at those alerts, right? What happened if the alert comes in at 8 p.m. on a Friday in whatever time zone you're in? Does anybody see it, or does it sit to Monday, right? Because those are issues that we need to address. We typically see ransomware as a service actors, for instance, attack on Fridays or on a holiday when they know no one's at the stern, that nobody's looking at the glass, and that's when they have free reign. So if your alerts are firing, where are they going? Who's looking at them? And then what are you doing for breach detection? So let's say that the attackers get past your first line of defense and they're in your environment. How do you know? Most of the time we see some dwell time, right? The dwell time is reduced dramatically over the last 3-4 years. It continues to go down, but still we see attackers do several things always when they land. They do some type of discovery in map or some type of scan or AD find to see if they can find out domain credentials or what the domain structure looks like. They're going to try to escalate privileges. They're going to try to do lateral movement. All those things can be detected internal to your organization using something like breach detection, something like honeypots. One of the really great tools out there that I'll mention here too. I'm kind of tool agnostic. There's a lot of great tools out there, but the Think's canaries out there and the canary tokens is one way that you can get a product that's really affordable, and it can make a lot of difference in your environment just because of the things it can detect on and how effective it is. We use that product in any new MSSP customers we bring on. We'll deploy that product for at least 30 days, whether they're paying for it or not. We'll deploy it just to validate that there's no attackers already in the environment. And I can tell you that many times that's what we discover. Attackers already in the environment from some time in the past, and we get alerted to it by deploying these honeypots. then this is the validation piece that comes in. Test and see if you can detect things like Mimikatz, Bloodhound, Responder, or other basic attacks. Create a new domain admin. See what happens. Does anybody know? Does anybody care? Do you see that? So some validation here are good things that you can do, and these are free. They're things that you can download and put a laptop on your environment, or throw access in the cloud and try it out and see what happens. And I encourage you to book time that you tell your team you're going to be away. As a security officer, you test your own tools and your own folks and processes around attacks that are extremely common. And then also ask for a new security assessment. Get another third party in. We a lot of times see, unfortunately, customers who get relationships built with vendors, and it becomes that assessment becomes less impactful because we've got this relationship with the vendor. We just trust them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trusting a vendor. That's what we ask, and we want our customers to do for us at OneSource is trust us. But I'm also very aware and acknowledge and tell our customers that, hey, you may want to have another party come in and take a look at things and just validate what we're doing is successful. A good MSSP or a good partner that's working with you will value that because it helps them fix the gaps as well. And there may be gaps. Those are the opportunities you have to work with your provider to get things in good working order. And then meet with the CIO or the CTO, the director of IT, whoever that is. Find out how they think about security, if at all. This is a place where security sometimes can get bypassed, kind of sneakered around, if you will, as IT may not have the same viewpoint, the same mission that you do from a security officer or cybersecurity person. And so they go back to old ways or old behaviors, or maybe they're looking for convenience, or maybe the business is putting so much pressure on IT to build up infrastructure or to execute on application demands and those sorts of things that security kind of takes a back seat. We want to make sure that we are partnered with them so that we all think about this in the right way and in the way, and give cybersecurity and the security posture of the organization the right attention from the start. Ask them how they track asset inventory. So how do we know what it is we have in the cloud? It's extremely difficult for you as a security officer or CISO or security practitioner to secure what you don't know about, right? So if there's an AWS environment that we're using for dev and we never even worried about it because nobody even tracks it or it's just out there, the question becomes, are we accessing that environment with corporate resources? Is there a backend VPN that's connected to corporate resources, just once again to make things convenient or make it easy to do? Those are all things that you need to be aware of. And so work with them to understand what the asset inventory looks like holistically, and how do we track it. And then also the question is, what is the organization's strategy for on-premise versus cloud? And I just did a webinar the other day. We talked about multi-cloud. Are we talking about public cloud, private cloud, on-premise, how all those things play out? Different strategies may need to be applied for those different environments just because of the way the architecture works between them. So understand what their strategy is. That also can impact your security budget and how you're planning to go over the next 2 or 3 years. If the strategy is we're moving all of our on-prem virtualization hosts to the cloud, well, then maybe that changes what you're doing on-prem for network, east, west, and north, south traffic across your on-premise environment or your private cloud environment. And so you may need to understand what that impact's going to be from not only a budgetary standpoint, but maybe a resource standpoint too. Maybe you don't have the resources right now that have really strong and good cloud security backgrounds that you need to prepare for. Those are things that are informative, and you need to be on a partnership level with your folks in IT so that you go about this hand in hand. All right, and then what will happen here is when you look up, 6 months has flown by, and you'll be amazed that all that time's flown by, and you can really take stock on kind of where you're at and where you see your organization going. You'll have the time now to kind of sit down and implement your strategy on changing the corporate behavior as it pertains to security. So security awareness, consciousness, a healthy suspicion that's within your organization, how you enable your organization and your staff to report incidents or raise flags on things they see that are suspicious. We want to know those as a security operations group. The more that we can see and the more visibility have, and the more that suspicious things that we can see going on out in our own environment, that really helps us heighten our awareness and be better prepared for issues that may or may not arise. And then as you've got your strategy in place and you've got an implementation plan that you're running through to get it, then now you can sit back, sip your latte, and relax. And as you can see from the graphic I have here, that never happens for a CISO. So there's never a chance that you get a chance to relax and lay back and sleep. It's the nature of the business. And that's why as well, I think of this, I'll close with saying here that if this is a role or a place where you really see yourself wanting to be, I will stress that you have to have a passion for what's going on here in the cyber world. Just because this changes so much, there's so much to ingest. There's so much education. There's so many new threats. There's so many new threat actors. There's so many new ways they can exploit and take advantage of vulnerabilities and risks that it's an ongoing process. You have to love this and really be bought into it, that it's not just a job. It's really not a career. It's a passion. It's something you love. And when you take that passion, apply it to protecting and defending an organization, or in our case as a MSSP, many organizations, that's where I think you can really live out your dream or live out your passion by doing those things day to day. So once again, it's been a pleasure being with you and presenting here for this topic. I'll close out with I appreciate the CyberSaint security team for inviting me and asking me to come and give this discussion. My name is Steve Cobb. Once again, the CISO at OneSource. There's ways there that you can reach out to me however you can. I am everyone uses the term evangelist. I am definitely a person that wants to share and provide any knowledge I've got over my 30 plus years. I'll be glad to share it and hopefully better the industry, better those folks that are coming behind us if possible, and provide any kind of experience or tales and other things, consultation and advice that I can give. More than happy to do that and available to do that whenever you need. So if you have an issue in your organization that you need help with, reach out to me. If you just have a question or maybe even want to think about, hey, I've been offered this position and I'm wondering about this organization, we can go through these things as well, and I'll be happy to do that. My goal and my hope is that we can help protect and defend as many organizations as possible, in hopes that in the U.S. we can make this security thing much more part of our culture than what it is today. So once again, really appreciate your time. And if you need anything from me, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to discuss with you. Just real quick, we didn't have a lot of votes, but we had some folks here that were from non-security leadership, some that were IT but had security. So we had a little bit. We had everything but the category that I thought we'd have most of, which is the voluntold folks. To be the CISO security officer. We didn't have anybody respond to there. So that's probably a good thing. And maybe that's a trend in the industry that's changing. I don't think so from what I've seen, but still, at least for our presentation, it is. So have a wonderful rest of the Stronger Cybersecurity Conference. And once again, if you need anything from me, please let me know and reach out. Have a great day.